truth?
But the teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
What a strange person.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
So when maybe you or somebody else creates an AGI system and you get to ask her one question, what would that question be? What's outside the simulation?
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the mossy creek bottoms of King Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void, and I'm your host, Joe Roop. Thank you for joining us tonight on this Wednesday, June the 3rd, as we head into the strawberry full moon. The chaoses and the energies and the riots are still going on right now. I'm asking everybody, hang tight, stay safe, and thank you for listening to us wherever you're listening from across the World Wide Web. I want to thank our sponsors tonight at GetTheTea.com, AncientLifeOil.com, and Metaphorical Archaeology for supporting the network. You can support the show by joining our membership page and get some cool stuff. Big shout out to Casey for buying a bunch of cool stuff on my store here just recently. Yeah, so you can support this broadcast. That we're here 5 nights a week, 9 p.m. Pacific to 11. And after that, the Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable comes on too. So I hope everybody's surviving riots wherever you are. I mean, I think a lot of us believe that it's not going to happen in our city or whatever, but I can tell you, like, it's crazy because I live way out in the woods, and I literally, a guy up the road got beat to death yesterday, the day before yesterday. There's cops everywhere here too. So, it's not hard to see. If you're into astrology, you can go look at it and just see how many people are just giving into this energy. And then other than that, it's not much to talk about, except for our guest tonight who's with us. Also want to give a shout out to UFO Seekers, UFOseekers.com. That's where the real UFO field investigation is. Jarrod Murphy's here with us tonight, and he's a self-experimenter and field researcher of ancient technologies and lost history. He's had traveled the world searching for evidence of advanced ancestors and high technology. And tonight we're going to talk about his book, which is really cool. It's all about aliens, right? But who are the aliens? So the title of the book is It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us, Discovering Our History. And it looks like it's published from friends of ours at Paranoia. Thanks for coming on the broadcast, Jarrod. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
So you are... I mean, I got to get into the story, man, because this is like a new, it's not a new thing, but here recently, a lot of people have been looking at this like, oh yeah, are we the aliens, right? So when you went into this research, where did well, just tell me how this began, actually. I'd really like to know how you got started in this.
Yeah, cool. It was not originally going to be nonfiction. It was a bit like Michael Cremo starting Forbidden Archaeology, where he thought it would take like a few months and he spends 10 years on writing it. And I thought hey, I like following some science fiction. I like looking at the combination of some history with the Paracas mummies of Peru. They're some of the oldest mummies ever found. They're 9,000 years old. And I thought, okay, well, wouldn't it be neat if a secret government organization could reanimate cellular DNA, reactivating memories? And I thought, wouldn't it be a great fictional story for governments to be kind of fighting for really the oldest mummies they could find that could possibly reanimate and remember where ancient lost high technology was? I thought it would be a great fictional story. So about 4 years ago, I ended up spending almost 3.5 years working on this. And the first thing I find, which is not the sexiest subject for almost anyone listening, so if you're looking to go to sleep, here's the moment: engineered soil. I went very quickly from looking at the Nazca lines, the Peruvian Paracas mummies, and the next thing I know, I find terra preta. It's an engineered soil. It's Portuguese. It's found in Brazil. At current estimates are that there's an area over the size of Spain, and then it's in Australia. It's all over America and all over Europe, and they call it Chernozems or terra preta. And what it is it's soil that is engineered not by accident, but by man using biochar, which is different ingredients. But the interesting thing is this terra preta and Chernozems are all over the earth in areas that were supposed to be nomadic. And it can be 15, 20 feet thick, and it can filter carbon dioxide. It can filter heavy metals. It can filter fertilizers. And it's an engineered soil that wouldn't just be good for growing, but it also has electromagnetic properties. And that was just the opening beginner, where I start revisiting all the technology that a lot of great alternative and mainstream researchers are looking at and going, wow, well, this is an ancient geopolymer, like in Cadiz, Spain, where it's like Teflon and it's thousands of years old and we can't remake it. And then you got soil scientists looking at the soil for 100 years going, we can't engineer this. And then we have DNA scientists, like at Harvard, they printed a 52,000 word book on DNA 7 years ago. And the way we look at our past has always been in this Victorian storyline. And it evolved where 3.5 years later, there's a lot of rabbit holes to go down to really look at our past and realize that not only is there a missing story, but the technology is there. When you look at it holistically from a nano level of the soil to some of the engineering findings, and also realize that with some of the findings like off the coast of Cuba, where you have an entire pyramid city off the coast of Cuba, which was found 14 years ago while they were hunting for Spanish gold. And this is at a depth of 1,700 feet. So I have a map. I have many maps in my book. And when you look at, and it took many months to piece together with the help of an artist and a cartographer to, if this city, even if you count everything for plate tectonic and shifting and what we know of the world, our coastlines are not where they are. Like if you think of Doggerland in Ireland and between the coasts of Scotland, Ireland, and France, that was one land. Even up to 8,000 and 5,000 years ago, the continents and the coastlines are not where they are today. 50,000 years ago, when this city off the coast of Cuba would have been above ground, the Mediterranean and the Caribbean would have been more lake-like, and many, many different landmarks on Earth would have looked differently. And so what we have is a very hodgepodge story that we've told ourselves about our history and about our origins, when in reality, if you look at we can certainly talk about all the different technologies found right down to the soil. But at the end of the day, what I found in 3.5 years of research is that it's very likely that a highly advanced group of humans achieved that success, fell, and likely to this day, what we have obviously very many brilliant and smart people have seen they've seen aliens. But are they aliens? Or is it people who recovered over a catastrophe, whether in the hundreds or thousands or tens, and rebuilt themselves while the majority of our planet stayed on its own course, where a few collected what was left after a catastrophe and rebuilt themselves. And what we're dealing with when the Navy and the Air Force openly admit, hey, we've been looking at UFOs as of last year and we want your help. Are we looking at genetically modified humans? Are we looking at people who have been here in a much higher, more advanced capacity than we've wanted to consider? It takes a lot less hubris to say, well, the only way we could find this giant pyramid or this giant polygonal wall, the only way we could at all explain this is somebody came from somewhere and helped us. Unless you account for the fact that we're only looking at our coastlines from hundreds of miles in, and the majority of the human race and its story is still hundreds or thousands of feet underwater and miles off of current coastlines. And we're looking at the inland remnants of some very highly advanced structures down to soil, and soil is not fun to look at. But that's what I spent 3.5, 4 years doing to get to where we are. And I'm super excited to be on the show.
Well, man, we're good. It's good to have you here, because I'm a spiritual guy. Don't get me wrong. I'm a spiritual guy, but I'm not past this idea, based on all the evidence, especially that what we're calling spirituality may be something that we just really don't understand. Number one. And number two, it's like a lot of stuff, including what you're talking about, leads back to a seeding of a race. There's just so much stuff out there. I think your book is really cool. You know, I've had the chance to look into it. I haven't gotten to read all of it, but I think it's really cool in the fact that this kind of carries on things like, Robert Schoch and John Anthony West. We're just kind of like people are in the beginnings of showing us like, hey, man, our history's kind of messed up here. This ain't right.
Yep.
There's something going on. And that's what these guys did, right? They opened the doors to say, hey, something's going on. We need to look at this. And now we're digging in deeper. And it's funny how you're talking about the soil, because Monsanto right now has a patent on a seed that can grow in aluminum. Why?
Oh,
why?
That sounds rough.
So, yeah, I mean, soil isn't like a boring idea. And, not to me anyways. And, that Grant Morrison, he's into chaos magic and stuff, and said he wanted to meet aliens and got into this altered state so he could meet aliens. But the aliens told him that they create this larva out of a soil to seed planets. And this guy's just, I wouldn't say he's a researcher or a scholar, but he talked to an alien, that's what they told him. So I don't know. It's all interesting. Well,
it is. It's difficult to think that it's if you take each piece independently, it's hard. You grew up. I got excited about history when I was young. Who doesn't want to be Indiana? I thought I wanted to be Indiana Jones. I want to find the golden monkey and the.
Hell yeah.
And I don't care about giant stone pillars and Stonehenge and pieces of rock. To me, that was the most boring, not thrilling Raiders of the Lost Ark thing. I don't want to figure that out. That just wasn't it. And then your heart starts to jump when you look at the level of construction. Because I've done historical remodeling. I've done that for over 20 years. And so for me, it's one thing to look at a structure, whether it's large or a single family home or maybe one of these, big fancy mansions up on Summit Avenue where there's been 100 years of remodeling. And so the story that's told, not just in what you see, it's what's been repaired and how it's been done. So when I look at ruins and when I look at structures, and I've worked with structural engineers and architects, and I've been doing this for such a long time that it's impossible to look at some of these structures and say, this is not built because someone felt good or bad about a chief, or they really cared about a star alignment they could see when they were looking up at the sky. That's something that, there's always been societies like right now. The estimates are around 100, and the specifics of 155 tribes and how they've counted that, but 155 non-modern peoples live in either deserts or tropical environments or islands that are considered independent to having our technology and what we're even speaking on. And they've always lived side by side. I mean, if we lost our cell phones and our cars and our modern way of life, there are many of us that would not survive a catastrophic event. However, there are quite a few that already know how to do anything and everything, from the simple plants and things around them that are actually very complex medicinally, or to live without a house in the suburbs.
Well,
these are the.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No. Please go ahead.
When you look at the soil, what, like, how far back does it go? I mean, you might have answered it already. I might have missed it, but how far back can we trace it to where we can actually draw a line and say, well, this soil that looks like it's been engineered. And did you say nanotechnology, like it's been engineered that way?
Yeah. So there's been some testing, and some of the testing has shown it to be around 4,000, 4 to 8,000 years is some of the testing for submicron remnants. And so this is like very specific. It's very specific soot that has to be created by the hand of man. And where they've tested, there's been papers on it. There's one I quote from 2002 from Global Biogeochemical Cycles, Volume 16. That's one that I quote. But what's the bigger question, like what you're asking, and this is something that's super exciting, and we know that there's Chernozems or black soil or terra preta here. I'm in the Midwest. I'm in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, and it goes all the way into Canada, and it goes all the way down into South America. And we know that it runs across from the Danube and the middle of Europe all the way through Siberia. The issue is all of these areas, the majority of the areas, and it can run 20 feet deep. It can be a few centimeters. Its age, what's interesting is that these are areas that were considered to be nomadic. And you have eraser marks on our globe, which are the North Africa, for instance. It was, now latest research is showing that the lakes and rivers were there even 5,000 years ago. So where's all the black soil? So we have two parts to this. One is the question of how old are some of these biochars, and there's different. So they're using electroscopy. They're using different kind of electron. There's various different ways to measure and to identify it and to break down an age. But some of them are young, 4,000 to 8,000 years is really young. And some of it, based on its thickness and where it started, we also have to consider that if this is one of my gauge points, is the city that's underwater off of Cuba. And I have a picture of it in the book, but you can find it on the internet, look for Cuban Pyramid City. And this is a city that could not have been above ground, above water, less than 50,000 years ago. So if it ends up being that this city has the same polygonal construction components as some of the things like the Great Pyramid and at Tiahuanaco and Ollantaytambo and everywhere that everyone talks about, from South America to Egypt, about complex giant megalithic blocks that connect together and stop earthquakes and stop frequencies and vibrations or enhance those, then the engineered soil could be corresponding with the same advanced builders that are making, like I mentioned, the Cadiz, Spain, old inland. There was a bay where they found a wall, and it's ancient construction, it's ancient concrete. They don't have an age on it, but it is geopolymer, and it has a surface on it that's like Teflon, and no barnacles grow on it. And it's at least, from some of the other stuff they found around it, they figure it's at least 3,500 to 5,000 years old, but that's erroneous. And so with the soil, how do we explain something like this in an area of Canada that was just supposed to be occupied, from a traditional look, post Younger Dryas, we're saying Canada was, well, there was a land bridge, and, standard academia says, okay, well, everybody came over down the ice and they occupied South America and everywhere in the last 12,000 years. Well, we know from last summer, actually 2 years now, 2018, 2019, that the LiDAR scans in Guatemala have shown over 40,000 structures in 800 square miles. And we're talking hundreds of pyramids, thousands of buildings, and raised superhighways. And right now, the archaeologists and paleoanthropologists in Guatemala are saying we've grossly underestimated the populations of South America and Central America. So if you're in Central America in an 800 square mile blip of Guatemala, and Guatemala is it's not a small country, it's a big country, but it's not remotely the size of the rest of Central America, and it's proportionally now has LiDAR scans showing over 40,000 structures with hundreds of pyramids that no one ever saw, and we're grossly underestimating the populations. I think we need to immediately consider that post 13,000 years ago, post Younger Dryas, post this very identified apocalypse, we're talking about tens of millions of people, and this soil being as rich as it is, it's the best growing soil on Earth. We're talking about being able to support a population that may have been larger than the one we have now, and it may have been on all continents. And what are you going to do if we're not doing that? It's hard enough to want to piece together. I mean, kudos to the archaeologist that spends 20 years putting a vase back together. From every culture matters. Every chapter of human history is sacred and amazing and incredible. But if you spend 20 years putting a vase back together in the entrance to ancient Disney World, but you never excavate Disney World, isn't that kind of a tragedy?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So from audience out there, basically what you're saying, and in your book, you also talk about, hey, look, step back, look at the Earth. I mean, understand how the jet streams work and all this stuff works, and see, is this really a natural process? Or does it look like it's been engineered totally,
Right. Well, and it comes down to trees and everything too. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are we trying to find here is we're trying to find our origins, and every person I talk to, they talk about Atlantis, they talk about Lemuria, they talk about these places, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm healthily skeptical about it. I'm not saying I don't believe it. Even Robert Schoch brought it up on this show once, so.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, but it's he was really hesitant about that. He's I don't want to, feed this idea that this is 100% true or anything. But the notion of these, this place, you talk about this in your book too. What is it called? Pangea, where all the continents are together, right?
Yeah,
I think some people think that's Atlantis or something, or that's our ancient history, or this crazy sacred spiritual utopia that used to exist until the Great Deluge happened, and then we just spawned from, I don't know, monkeys or something. Even John Anthony West was look, evolution, right, that works, but evolution via natural selection, he wasn't so sure about. But every time somebody takes a dive into looking at these things and trying to get the common sense stuff out about it, they get ridiculed for it. And, I just hope that we find the answers. And I'm kind of hopeful now because you're talking about soil here. If we could study the soil, that's really going to help us out, I think, and really see a lot more.
Well, yeah, because it also goes into construction, because like I said, my construction background, then you have these large polygonal walls that are left, but we're calling them walls. In a lot of the cases, we might be looking at the foundations of buildings, that the materials that you see the metamaterials, like the final surfaces, not just plaster, but metal, plastic, glass, all of it, crystal, the finished surfaces may not be there any longer. And dynastically, when you look at the Egyptians or the Greeks, who, like Eric von Daniken, one of his books recently, they were discussing, here's the the Greeks are pointing to some of their most sacred and holy sites, and they all line up on, and I do bring it up, they oddly line up on golden ratios. And the Greek Air Force noticed it when it came to flight patterns and gas. But at the same time, the Greeks acknowledged and said, the gods built this. The Aztecs said it. The gods built this to the conquistadors. Saying it's always not credited to them. The Egyptians said, they're talking to Herodotus, and they said, hey, look, we're really old. Here's a list. Here's a king's list. And we had 36,000 years of kings. But you Greeks are old. You're young now, but you are very old, and you've come from a great people. And so people use all these references to come up. I want to answer your thing quick about the Atlantis. And what it is there's an idea, and I think it's stuck in our modern memory. It's part of our DNA. It's part of there's some things we've been just recently learning about our DNA and our abilities to remember. And it's passed down, like a traumatic event can be passed down. An instinct, something that we call an instinct or a hunch about something being good or bad, whether it's a plant or a situation or a sound, are actual genetic memories. And when I brought up these scientists at Harvard that recorded a book, they're up to recording 215 just so we're clear on this, they're up to 215 gigabytes on a gram of DNA. And and DNA has an endless level of memory. And so throughout this time, we've gone Atlantis, we've gone Lemuria, there's one place, one time where we came from. Well, these are all post-antediluvian Younger Dryas ideas. They're all born out of this Victorian, and I'm not trying to squash anyone's ideas here. It's fascinating for me as a kid to grow up and hear all these stories about Cleopatra and the Romans and Greek gods and Norse stuff. And, then there's some stuff that happens in the East. Oh, yeah, there's some stuff that happened in China, but, everything started in the Fertile Crescent. Well, the genetic assumption on that was based on Neanderthal and Denisovan genes and where they were or were not absent. We barely just finished mapping the human genome. We thought that we didn't even know there was a helix, a double helix to the DNA. Then we find out there's a quad helix to the DNA. Right. And then we find out we can actually store information on DNA. And then you have a lot of people saying, well, in a past life, I was this person. Well, is it possible that you might have the stored memoes of every human being that's ever lived, and you might be hyper-focusing?
Yes. Yeah, I've always thought the same thing. Like, they always say, I was a Greek god, and I was this, or I was a king and a queen. I'm like, well, who was the guy shoveling manure,
Yeah, you were never Bill the manure guy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but everybody's tapping into these great and wonderful people, and the more I read stuff like Carl Jung and the more conscious experimentation I do, it's like, wait a minute, we're probably just tapping into everybody's lives.
Right. So there's a chance. So there's one digression could be, we could talk about, is there collective human consciousness? Is there a chance that every human is possibly a genetic backup to everyone? Is there a way to maybe regenerate them or to tap into a conscious memory? But part of the gray area is of the technology and our history, which is, how do we start with the soil? And literally, who wants to be the nanoarchaeologist? Who wants to be the first person to go, well, let's take Tiahuanaco, ancient aliens. Everybody loves to talk about Tiahuanaco. Who wants to be the guy with the nanobots that has to go out over 1,000 square miles because every jerk in the neighborhood quarried the stone for the last known 200 years? They quarried out Tiahuanaco for people to build local buildings. There's magnetic properties. There's razor sharp edges. There's machining. Christopher Dunn, the engineer, has written, his book and his work on this. Brian Forrester. There's so many people who have looked at this in Ancient Aliens. The truth of Tiahuanaco is, it's a great site in South America where the details left on the blocks, the megalithic blocks that are there, are so precise and so precisioned. We can't reproduce them, but they also have magnetic qualities, but that's just what's left. And the sad part is, a lot of them, although there's been excavation, they're in mud. And what has been known and written about, and I've read some of the 1800s and early 1900s archaeological reports, it was known by those archaeologists 100 years ago that the locals come and they bust off stone. So you have to send a bunch of nanobots through the air to not only like dig up soil and piece together what you would think is like 3 crystallized bits to come up with a wall, to come up with a panel, to come up with a building.
And are you going to get a TV show for that? I don't know.
Right. Oh, yeah. You want to watch that? Hey, we're on we've almost rebuilt a hand cloth.
Yeah, that's right. Bad. Yeah. I totally get what you're saying, man. We got to take our first break here. I want to get into a little bit deeper into this and also kind of get into the theory about, aliens and our origins with our guest tonight. You guys stay with us. We'll be right back. But Jarrod, stay with us.
Yep.
Charlton from Metaphorical Archaeology. If you've ever had a traumatic paranormal experience, the effects of it may stay with you for years. Who do you talk to? You can't go to conventional help. What we do is we use emotional freedom techniques or tapping to actually neutralize the effects of that event. Maybe when you tell the story now, your heart races and your palms get sweaty. You don't even want to think about it because you don't know how to neutralize that. That's what EFT tapping does. It neutralizes those emotions. The circuit that was recorded on is gone. The energy flows freely and you're free of it. And that's what emotional freedom is all about. We offer this as a pro bono service, but this is something that I offer because no one, it seems, is helping people with these experiences. If you'd like to reach me, it's really easy. My cell phone is 214-995-3754. Please leave a message. I will get back to you as quickly as possible. Or you can email me, barb.eft@gmail.com. And EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. Reach out to me. It's confidential. This works. You won't believe the results.
All right, man. This is Crow 777, and you are listening to The Fringe FM.
Please listen. Now is not the time to fear. When your immune system is strong, shields up. You have very little worries. If your immune system is compromised, you're susceptible to all viruses. I say shields up and no fear. Try Heart Love from GetTheTea.com. Heart Love has a special ingredient called allicin. It comes from the healing part of the garlic plant. No garlic breath, no garlic leaking out your pores, just pure immune-building ingredients that gets your shields up. Heart Love is a unique blend of herbs that loves to build you up. Google garlic and know the benefits. One Heart Love pill is equal to 20 cloves of garlic. 20 cloves. Shields up. You've heard of our Life Change Cleansing Tea at GetTheTea.com. Now try Heart Love. And by the way, take your blood pressure and watch weekly what happens. So here's how to purchase. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com and build your shields. That's GetTheTea.com. Mention Ray in the coupon code and hit apply and receive free shipping.
Right, me old Chinas. I know it's an ad break, but before you lot shoot off and make yourself a cup of Rosie Lee or whatever else it is you're going to sling down your Gregory Peck, you need to listen to me babble. If, like me, you found your way to Light in the Void via a downloadable podcast, you might want to take a butcher's at the Fringe FM Wind and Kite. You won't Adam and Eve how many other shows there are or what they rabbit on about. Ancient history, conspiracy, the consciousness, the esoteric, the occult, metaphysics, parapolitical, ufology, technology and spirituality, to name but a few. They got featured hosts like Ryan Gable, Jeremy Scott, Alex Exum, Tim Doyle, Cortana and Gigi, Susanna Ross, the Reverend John Polk, Michael Deacon and J.D. Lewis. You might find yourself listening to the thoughts and theories of the author of The Fish you just finished reading. Or you could pick up the dog and bone, call in and tell everyone your own beliefs or experiences. So do me a favour, before you put on the Ansel or crack open a bottle of vino or roll a joint, go to the Fringe FM and see what you're missing.
From a cave in the depths of your mind, it's Light in the Void with Joe Roop.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you're interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm, or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
Hey, I'm J.M. DeBoard, and when I want to talk about dreams, I look up my man Joe Root and his show, Lighting the Void.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. Tonight our guest is talking about an alien theory that I think we all need to kind of really look into. We need to really stop like going along with the narrative, even I have to say this, even with ancient aliens. And Jarrod Murphy's here tonight. We're talking about his book, It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us, Discovering Our Lost History. And in the first part of the show, I think it was funny how you're like, well, this is not going to be a super cool story, but we're going to talk about soil, you know?
Yeah.
And, but that is an interesting fact to look at, because if you can trace nanotech and you can trace a lot of things in soil, obviously, but
yep.
What I want to launch off here is the idea that I really need to understand, because I'm still kind of getting into your book, and as your book goes along, you're kind of slowly releasing this theory, right? So, This theory is that, and help me understand this, is that it's possible that aliens survived something, that what we call aliens, and they reestablished this place, so to speak. Is that what you're getting at?
Well, what I'm more that the human race itself achieved a much higher level of science, health, technology, genetics, that the human race that was pre-Younger Dryas and much older, based on the soil, based on underwater cities, based on the technology of what we're finding, that they would have easily had the capability to manipulate, change, control, and shape, not only terraform the planet, but themselves into genetically whatever was needed in order to have a functioning planet, basically to tune like a violin. And that this human race, through cataclysm and or through infighting, fell and likely survived, and they rebuilt, because we are seeing through many different experiences around the world that exemplify exceptions to military UFOs, which are a real thing, but actual UFOs, that there's a better chance that these are our ancient human ancestors who have continued to pick up the technologies prior Younger Dryas and have continued to either develop on their own quietly, just like we live alongside 150 tribes around the planet that they're still in the woods, they're still wearing close to nothing, and we leave them alone. That we are basically that to them, that they are either intentionally or unintentionally. I mean, we could spend a whole conversation discussing why is it that ancient advanced humans don't interact with us, or when they do, why do they look like they have big giant black eyes with, why is the most common alien interaction a little white translucent and or white gray with big eyes? Well, maybe it's because they see infrared wave frequency and technology. We can get into why are all the ancient ruins that we're finding that are the most advanced all seem to be based on frequency and wave technology, just like this soil. The soil has electromagnetic properties. Even Eric, I met I had the opportunity to meet Eric Von Daniken a couple times, and one of the times that we talked, he was discussing the electromagnetic properties of a soil test he did in Nazca. The giant lines. Everyone gets fascinated by the birds and the animals that's graffiti. That's like, and again, it's belongs to a group of we're all so lucky to be human and alive and to have lived. There was a group of humans that at the point of their technology, they put down birds and they put down sacred animals on the Nazca lines. But the true Nazca lines are long, kilometers long, unbending, unchanging, arsenic-laced, totally engineered. Yeah, you can scratch a picture on the Nazca desert and it's not going to go anywhere. But the Nazca lines are earth circuitry. And that same circuitry is also in other parts of South America. And it also has electromagnetic properties, which is just the same as the soil. It's not just about growing food. It's about having soil that these people didn't engineer a technology you just held in your hand. They engineered the earth to function. So at that level, when we can talk about whether it's a bioengineering or whether it's engineering of the soil, but frequencies, waves, that technology that would involve that would also allow you to see it and feel it. And if you're doing 0-point turns, it's easy to mistake a human that could trip out their own body like some people trip out cars with spinny wheels.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. I got to say something incredibly stupid here, though. I mean, and it's I tend to say these types of things, but I don't care because it's on my mind. If these are advanced beings, couldn't they have like developed themselves to be sexier figures? And don't tell me that they threw that out, because that would really kind of suck, you know? But everything else is like awesome. You know what I mean?
Okay, I'm totally digressing because one part of me just wants to say,
yeah, that's stupid.
Well, yeah. See. Yeah. So part of me is thinking, boy, I just find you attractive for your mind. Tell me that equation again.
Yeah, right.
Like we're just too dumb to get what turns them on.
Yeah, that's probably what it is exactly. You know, you're right.
Or I got another one though. Or have you ever heard of synesthesia?
I've heard the word. I swear I have. Someone's told me. What is it?
Okay, here's a general I'm going to read a general definition. Synesthesia is a phenomenon where one sensory or cognitive pathway automatically, involuntarily connects to a secondary or cognitive pathway. So, for instance, sometimes you could, in chromesthesia, sound converts to color. And one might hear a musical instrument and see a colored geometric shape, while somebody else might hear the same instrument and think it sounds like a particular color. Other synesthetes, they think sound, they have photoism, they can sense, they can be mixed with frequencies and visualizations. And so this is going somewhere interesting when you talk about sexy and when you talk about powers and why people often regress and they think that they were like, they always think they're Cleopatra or Antony, but they don't think that they're Bill the poop cleaner.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So there's another one. Synesthetes with chromesthesia, for instance, can trigger fireworks shapes, and they see colors like a kaleidoscope, and they fade with the sound, and then they can see brightness, colors, smells, like sounds, colors, and shapes can be mixed. And for instance, spatial sequence synesthesia allows synthelites to see physical spaces closer or farther, depending on the number, and they tend to have incredible memories and details of locations, dates, space. It all floats in their minds. So what I'm getting to is 20% is the estimate of the human population has synesthesia. But the interesting thing is it mixes across all the senses. So there's auditory, tactile. You can hear a sound and it can induce a sensation in your own body. One, you could specifically have a word, and I talk about all this in my book, but the idea is you could hear one specific word and feel a touch in a part of the body. Can you imagine sitting in what you're calling a Greek amphitheater, where they always, they'll have people spread out and sit, and they'll crumple a dollar bill and they'll say, can you just believe how good the acoustics are here? It's so interesting how they were able to produce this. And then can you imagine seeing a play and being able to feel, hear, and touch everything the actor was doing?
Yeah, that would be awesome.
But and then sense it, the smells, the sound, all of it working together. Interesting thing about evolution, it's a theory, right?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that theory, it's not, and I'm not going down my upbringing of Catholicism here. I'm not going down that road. But the idea of, if we only get things through a forced adaptation, here's something that should make you scratch your head as a side thought. If we're using 10 to 14%, whatever the estimates are of our consciousness, why is it that we have a brain that would have only become what it has if it wasn't for a forced adaptation? Ergo, would it not be assumed that at one point we had forced our brain to be at a functional level to have it gotten the brain we have because we had already been using it? And now we're in safe mode. Now we're just like a computer that's broke. And when you have the images of the third eye and the idea that we could, through the pineal gland and the ocular nerves in there, that we actually could, through these things that we're either, and again, I'm not a skeptic to being spiritual and mystical, but here's the deal. When you have a 747 and you crash it, and let's just say it's basically intact, but for 100 years, you can't get it going, and then people forget about it. Well, 600 years later, let's just assume it has the best battery ever, and you can bang on the blinky board, i.e. the cockpit control panel, and it makes blinky things. But if it's only been making blinky things for 1,000 years, and that's your whole religion now, then the blinky box makes blinky things, but somebody else is going to stand, look, and go, that's a 747. You're in the cockpit. It flies.
Yeah, right.
You just have to start. And
this is the operating system, and this is this. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Right. But if you've only been hitting it as the blinky box, and a couple pandemics and a few catastrophes and a few wars later, it's the blinky box and burn everybody at the stake. If you don't know that it's the blinky box, then it's not a 747. So when you have an ability like synesthesia, this is a powerful thing. And I talk about this a lot in the book. Imagine being at a construction site and you're building a polygonal wall. And I brought it up once already. They're all over the earth. They're on every continent. Yet everybody was separated. But on every continent, there are walls that are made out of hundreds or thousands of ton stone blocks that aren't just big. They're shaped to fit each other, to match, cancel, or receive waves and frequencies. They cancel earthquakes, or they can also transmit. We could get into the technology of them, but the point is, let's say I'm sitting at one of these sites where they have these complex puzzled pieces of polygonal masonry, where you have a 3 foot wide, 2 foot tall, 6 foot tall, 12 foot long stone that has 5, 6, 8, 15 sides. Some of them cut as small as a finger, but they're totally flat. Each of these blocks fit together, not at the point where you'd miter a baseboard for a bedroom or for a wall for modern construction, but these aren't just mitered to fit together where they say, isn't it incredible? You see it on all these shows. Hey, look, you can't fit a piece of paper, you can't fit a pen, you can't put a knife in between them, but it's the whole length of the stone. But when you're like, well, they must have heated them or agitated them or put them together like marshmallows, and then but for the cuts themselves, could you imagine with a synthelete, someone who had synesthesia, they could imagine hearing the song Ramble On by Led Zeppelin, and it's actually the entire sequence cut pattern. And when you look down, you can visually see in a color pattern every bit of the stone that you have to shape away to make it fit perfectly.
That's amazing, man. Yeah. That kind of explains, like when you look into sacred geometry and the Pythagorean teachings and stuff, he was tapping into that. He was seriously tapping into that. And I think there's something to the whole Western mystery tradition that got taken over by power and corruptness and all this other stuff. But back in the day, these guys, these builders, they knew this stuff. And they put it in these structures and things to remind us. I think it does something also to the subconscious. And now I think we're starting to wake up to it. Have you heard of do you know what biogeometry is?
No, you'll have to explain it.
It's kind of like feng shui, but instead you understand how geometrical shapes actually affect the energy of certain things. Like you could build a city with the right kind of geometrical patterns and shapes and things like that. And the energy, not like the energy of the place, the vibration of the place, everything is going to be absolutely like stellar, utopia. Even the people and the energy around it are going to feel better. But
yeah, no, that's a fact. I write a lot of, I write a lot about this. I didn't call it that. It's, seismic metamaterial is an actual science of, not that the concept here isn't, but as I'm working out and finishing the book, there's scientists in 2019, and it's barely been reported on, and it's a paper called The Role of Nanophonics in the Birth of Seismic Megastructures. And what this is the study of how do you seismically mute, either a single structure or an entire cityscape. And these scientists were able to, and this is incredible, this should be like on the cover of Smithsonian, but it is kind of new. I guess the world of science moves kind of fast, not exactly screaming fast here, but they noticed, they couldn't help, in quotes, they could not help but notice the striking similarity between an invisibility cloaking design and the architecture of some of ancient megastructures as antique Gallo-Roman theaters and amphitheaters. They built them, the science of the pylons that make up the structures show perfect symmetry to avoid falling or being hit and muting earthquakes. In other words, you could go to a Greco-Roman theater and also the city of Bologna, Italy. They laid it out intentionally, the towers that have now fallen. There's only a few left. In the 1700s, there was a couple hundred up. They were up to over a couple 100 feet tall, and they were huge, but they were laid out in a pattern that these scientists, which I go into extensively in my book, proved that the cities were laid out so that there would be parks and places of safe zone where every single, think about this, you have to know the earthquake pattern of the area that you're planning to build an entire city in.
Right.
And then you have to lay out the soil, the trees help also, and lay out the city in a way that it's muted and completely at peace with the tremblings of the earth, but then also communicating energies and frequencies that you would want to capture. So remember when I mentioned that dollar bill in the amphitheater?
Right.
Imagine you and I are walking along and we're both sick. I have cancer and you have a new disease. We don't know what they are, but the earth travels through the solar system, through the universe, through the galaxy, right? In vice, whatever. We can get argumented, you know, galaxy, then universe. But the issue is we pass through a storm. This storm is not able to be blocked out by the ionosphere. And despite having a worldwide gridded system of energy machines creating the right frequencies and patterns, it vibrates each of our cellular structures differently. And I end up irritated and slightly sociopathic for an hour, and you end up with a disease, or I have cancer, like I said, and we both walk into the amphitheater, and not only do we watch a great play, but the prescription and remedy is the right sound and frequency. The same work that Anthony Holland did. Anthony Holland's TED Talks, and Anthony Holland is the man and the researcher and the professor that picked up Royal Rife's work and was able to kill MERS, leukemia, dozens of bacterias and viruses, and his TED Talks from 2008. And between that and laying out city structures, you are absolutely talking about a real science that is shown in ancient structures, and not just in their individual foundations, but in city layouts like Bologna, Italy. And then all over the world, we have spheres, giant spheres. They're found everywhere. They started to be found during the banana plantations in Costa Rica. And those spheres were like, well, they and some of them were hollow, because throughout the years, whether it's in Bosnia or China or Russia, in the Arctic Circle, or even these spheres, David Childress from Ancient Aliens and dozens of successful books. I mean, Childress gets joked at all the time about stone balls, and he's the one who raised my eyebrow on them. And the reality is, these scientists right now in this paper in 2019 identified that if you had stone spheres of various shapes and sizes, and in Bosnia, they found one that's 64 tons. That's not a small sphere. And then that's Dr. Samir Osmanagic and that group around the Bosnian pyramid. They started finding stone spheres around there.
Just the shapes of the stones set off a certain frequency, right? Is that what you're getting at? Or they mute them.
Right. They mute them, or they enhance them, or they cancel them, and they create. I mean, they're a seismic wave shield, and they won't. A series of these, if you had like a dozen of them, and they were different sizes, you could tune a single structure or a whole city. It's not just about canceling earthquakes.
Sure.
It's about tuning them in to the right frequencies and waves. And we're just starting to understand that. I mean, Tesla, everybody's been going on lately in a great way. They've been talking about Tesla again and about how he said, if you want to understand anything, you need to understand that the earth rings like a bell. It's about frequencies and waves. And we're at a very elementary age of it. Like you said, you brought it up, Shock, John Anthony West. They were pioneers. They stated something that, the Sphinx is so old. And John Anthony West, I saw the videos of him on YouTube saying, I got to get Robert Schoch here.
Yeah.
And I heard the one when just to digress, I heard the one when John Anthony West said, now don't quote me on this. And you know how flamboyant he was. He says, don't quote me on this. But, when Schoch first came here and he finally saw it, he said, don't quote me, but this could be 200 something to 500,000 years old.
Right.
And that's in the video. And John Anthony West was quite the, individual. But at the same time, Robert Schoch goes on to do that work. And you have all this agreeing literature now and peer review that shows that the Sphinx in that area is thousands of years older. And so each piece of this technology, whether it's wave and frequency energy that has to do with not only repairing an individual human cell and you and I, as we are introduced to things that are not part of this, like maybe way more engineered world, I think it scares people to think that we were that advanced, because we really are broken when the normal tree size for thousands of years was a sequoia, or like the great redwoods like Hyperion, that's 379 feet tall and 60 feet wide. And that used to be every forest from California to Siberia. That was every tree. And can you imagine laying them out properly with these giant spheres and polygonal walls? I mean, we'd have a great planet. We could
change the Earth, period.
And what if, right. And then therefore it's like these memories that we, and again, this is the careful part. We are loving, caring humans. The issue is when you are when you are in safe mode, and I am in safe mode with 10 to 14% consciousness, when we bang on the blinky board and it's really synesthesia.
To say that. Yeah. Like the energies, all these different things are pretty much ruling us, not the other way around too, Right.
And they might just be, it's just technologies we don't remember yet. We're close, we're getting there, but we have a legend about it. We have a mystical story. We have a poem. We have a folk song. We have a religion. We have something that mystifies something that was a very practical technology, that it's heresy or it's not as romantic, but it's the truth. And the problem is that when you have, here's the problem. The one criticism I have of humans is that if you drink blood, I'm just going to say this, if you drink blood out of fill in the blank skull for 1,000 years, it's a thing. It's just a thing.
Yeah, right.
But the problem is you did it for 1,000 years, so now it's a thing. Great grandpa did it, you do it. If you're in the club, you do this. But the point is, if you have an old piece of parchment and it's like, well, maybe it meant this and maybe it meant that. The problem is it's all, anything post-flood that's been mystified is ridiculous. I mean, you got people with plates in their faces still. And it's like, well, don't disparage somebody's ancient culture. Here's the thing. We can't live like we're in the Middle Ages anymore. We are on the verge of awakening to the fact that we keep seeing unidentified UFOs. We keep finding highly advanced ancient technology in the ground. Well, what are we? We're stuck in the middle. But at the same time, we put filters on because we hear the word. If I just throw out the word Atlantis, you got a picture, and it's, and then we relate to it. And then if we say Fertile Crescent, that's one thing. That's science. If I say Garden of Eden, you very much can throw on. I mean, if you're anything like me, and if you're from the South, I mean, I grew up an Irish Catholic.
Yeah. I know where you're going.
In many.
Yeah, we got to take a break here.
So
I'm sorry though, but we got to him over the break here. But I want to pick up just right where we're at when we come back with Jarrod Murphy, guys. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We're at the top of the hour. But check out this book. It's not aliens, it's us. Right? It could be.
Yeah.
It could totally be us.
Discovering our lost history.
We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Fringe FM.
Are you intrigued by paranormal talk radio? You'll love the new paranormal radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Hey, this is No Way Jose, a Northern California Piscean stuck in the Arizona desert. I'm a void walker, and I got the shoes to prove it. So what do I do when my soul yearns to delve deep into the realm of the unknown? I aim my satellite straight into the night sky and catch a smooth ride on the KTLK-DB radio waves. I tune into Lighting the Void with Joe Root on the Fringe FM.
Joe, Lighting the Void is the best show on the planet. This is Barney, your friend from Facebook. Thank you and all the crew for all you do. Namaste, my friend.
This is Macon from the foothills of North Carolina, and I am a void walker.
G'day, void walkers. This is Lily from down under Australia. The world may be small, but the enigma is greater. So let your curiosity take you for a journey with Joe Root.
Hey, this is V, coming in from Central Maryland, and I am a void walker.
This is Kevin Doherty, a beginner void walker. I'm from Vancouver, BC. I know a little about a lot, and as Leonard Skinner said, I guess the rest. I learned a lot from Mr. Root from the show, and I heard it from the beginning. I knew right then he was going to be a new Art Bell. Thanks for all your shows, and keep it up.
Hey, this is Derek from Mass, a.k.a. the Night Stalker, and I'm a void walker.
This is Mark from Chicago, and I walk the void to ascertain what is consciousness.
My name is Jarrod Johnson, and I'm from Humboldt County, California. I do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. I do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family of explorers of consciousness. I'm a void walker. Thanks, Joe Root.
I'm Clyde Lewis. You are listening to The Fringe FM.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Have you ever seen an ad or banner which brought you a feeling that someone is reading your mind or even listening to your conversations? Your online data is being used against you. Surfshark is a VPN service that makes online privacy protection easy and attainable. You can use it on as many devices as you'd like simultaneously. Surfshark encrypts all internet traffic sent to and from your devices and ensures that your IP address remains hidden. The VPN service that we use at UFO Seekers, plus 1 month free for $1.99 a month. Visit surfshark.deals/seekers.
We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling. The ground shook. You could hear rushing water. And then history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails. Stores with their shelves stripped bare. ATMs can't operate. Deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand three truths. FEMA is broke. The system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25-year shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in one business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
Hey, Fringe listeners, this is Dave Cruz, host of Beyond the Strange Radio, asking you to join us live Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Fringe FM. Visit BeyondTheStrange.com for links to chat, social media, and schedules of the show. And remember, always stay strange. Hasta.
Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal, there's a show called Into the Paranormal. I'm Jeremy Scott. Hear me live Saturdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern on the Fringe FM.
Para-Abnormal News, I'm Brad Bernards. On the evening of Wednesday, May 27th, residents of northern Turkey were treated to a spectacular light show. Videos on social media show what appears to be a meteor streaking across the sky before exploding in the air with a thunderous boom. Turkish news website Daily Sabah reports that a ball of light was visible in several provinces at around 8:30 p.m. local time. It's an amazing sight, filmed from multiple angles, clearly showing that the object exploded at a significant altitude. It's not yet confirmed that the object was a meteor, but news outlet Hariette reports that meteorologists have assessed it as what we'd expect from a meteor shower. Scientists have developed a new way to create sights for blind people. It's like skywriting, but instead of blue sky, the letters are written on the brain itself. This courtesy of ScienceNews.org. The new approach, described May 14th in Cell, bypasses the eyes and delivers a sequence of electrical signals to the brain, creating the perception of a glowing light that traces a shape. With further refinements, the method might one day restore aspects of vision to people with damaged eyes or optic nerves. Tiny jolts of electricity to the visual cortex can make a person see small bursts of light called phosphenes. The signal comes from using electricity as a stylus, essentially tracing lines onto the visual cortex with electric current. Connect with the news at parabnormalradio.com. I'm Brad Bernards, Para-Abnormal News.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. All right, tonight, our guest, Jarrod Murphy. We're talking about his book, which is a pretty cool book. I can't wait to get all the way through this book, actually. It's published by our buddies at Paranoia Publishing. Got to give a big shout out to Olav and Ron Patton, because we love them, obviously. Who doesn't love them? But it's not, the name of the book, you could type it in too, so it's Not Aliens Worse, it's Us, Discovering Our Lost History. And so we haven't even really, gone into, we're starting to get into some of the frequency stuff, some of the stuff that you're talking about. Now, you called this, did you call this quantum cymatics? Is that what you called this?
Overall, I'm calling it cymatic polygonal construction. And whether it's a wall or whether it's a seismic like a resonator, like a sphere. I'm just calling it. I'm taking Hans Jenny's research of cymatics, and in my book, I'm calling it cymatic polygonal science or cymatic polygonal construction, and it involves whether it's underground or above ground, and the subject matter of it from a bio standpoint, I didn't specifically label, but I address it from Anthony Holland to Hans Jenny's work in cymatics. And, and again, Anthony Holland picked up Royal Rife's work. So I touch on Royal Rife so people can understand some of the history, because he had success with some very high, strong frequencies to kill cancer and other diseases. And Anthony Holland picked it up in a university setting and was doing it in 2008. And there's continued work, yet there's no, as far as I know, there's no press, there's no further information, but this is not some backdoor university. This is a TED Talked, well-published man who has actually killed MRSA and leukemia and a number of other diseases using frequencies and waves, literally shredding these bacteria and viruses under a microscope for all of science to see, and according to the TED Talk, be surprised that no one has done this. But when you look at these Greco-Roman amphitheaters, and when you look at these giant stone spheres that are found everywhere in these polygonal walls and this engineered soil, it appears that there was an ancient group of humans that very much knew that the Earth was and the universe runs on frequencies and waves. And here we are with, like you were pointing out earlier on the break, there's, whether it's Wi-Fi and turning your home into, I was not sure that we should turn our homes into a giant microwave, but,
right.
There was apparently something wrong with having if you're building a new home, it's easy to add a Cat5 line to a wall and say, well, I want a hard connection here. But there was a convenience factor. People like to be quick and they like convenience. Why have a gas station on one side of the road when you can have a gas station on both sides of the road?
Gotcha.
And
yeah,
they can be just as big. But, it takes too much time to go across the street. So if you have Wi-Fi, why not make it faster? And then we end up with this 5G, and we end up with, again, you're talking about high intense waves, potentially messing with the human body. And I know that there's some serious research and papers out there about this not being a technology that we should be personally exposed to, but it goes back to, I think, as far as I'm concerned, taking one part of what makes us human, and by human I mean connected to the whole planet. At the end of the day, I don't mean that it's all technology as in like we think of computers. I'm saying that we once were connected to the soil, literally connected, that there's plenty of evidence about barefoot running, like Barefoot Ted and Born to Run by Christopher McDougall. And you can spend hours about why you should be barefoot and the electron transfer between you and the earth. Yeah. Well, everything from what you eat and the air you breathe is affected by frequencies and waves.
Yeah, and there's, we were talking about that last night too, about the toroidal fields that Claude Swanson talked about in his books. If you look into a lot of the occult texts, specifically like Rosicrucian ritual magic ones, they've got rituals called the middle pillar, where you focus your energy up through your feet, using vision focus. And, by the way, touching each chakra, going down the middle of your body, vibrating a certain God name. Well, these God names may be Abrahamic, right? Because we understand that they're Abrahamic, but it's literally could not even be the name it could just be the frequency and the vibration that what we're doing.
Absolutely. Yep. When Om is a perfect example, the cymatic, what was scary was when Hans Jenny when they started doing cymatic research, and the symbol for Om matches up to what was what vibrates when you take sand and you put a frequency under, the point of cymatic part of the study. In order to visualize a wave frequency, they, you just put sand on a plate that can vibrate, and then you send a signal through a speaker and it creates a pattern. And the frequency pattern picture for ohm is something that may have been remembered from the technician, from the technology, from the human society that could engineer the whole planet. And the only thing that, when it got dumbed down and dumbed down and dumbed down, and not dumbed down because people didn't want to be smart, but perhaps it was a flood, a catastrophe, a war, and then eventually it was possibly a pattern that could only be remembered in a piece of clothing or in a song. And then you now have these chants, or it's banging on the blinky board. Something about banging on the blinky board works, and it creates a response, and it's in the realm of what we're hoping to have happen. And also I think we're optimistic people overall.
Yeah, and it runs on ones and zeros, and we figured that part out, right? You know what I mean? Like, we figured out the binary method of transferring data. That's all we really need. Like, there can't be any more complex or more safe versions of it. It's ones and zeros, and all we just need to do is turn up the volume. Like, I feel I feel like we could be in like when you put a piece of meat in a microwave and you hit 1 minute, even when the microwave is going off, right? Like, even when it's going off, it still has pauses between, like, not pushing in the radiation, if you really listen to it, and then it'll just bog down, the power will bog down. Then it pushes in the radiation, right? And then if you put it on defrost, it's really slow. Well, like, I think we're on defrost. We're getting close to defrost. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. That's about right.
Like, maybe low defrost, but still, we don't need to be doing that. And these guys are running the show. These scientists, we've replaced the popes and the priests and all of these philosophers with scientists who like to shoot up rockets, make weapons, and screw with frequencies that I don't think they know the first thing about frequency and energy. I think they do, but that's wrong. I shouldn't say that, because they do. But like, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg here with what you're talking about, where you can just build structures in a certain geometrical way and it just levels the field,
Yeah, and part of it is the organics that are gone. So on one point would be is just the structures themselves. They weren't just we see the remnants of structures that have been reoccupied and readapted to use over the last few thousand years. And they've also been repaired from the day they were built, there was repair work. So you're not looking at structures that are ultimately in their original forms. And so we build stories and ideas off of these structures. And also, like you said, we don't know everything that there is to know. And then you have some pretty incredible people like Stig Severinsen and Wim Hof, who the first time he came to America, I got to meet him with 100-something, maybe 120 other people. I was able to go meet Wim Hof, who is the first person proven by science to have control of his autonomic nervous system. And what that means is that whole chakra thing. Have you ever met Wim Hof? Is hilarious.
No, but I hope Pacho's listening, because we need to write that name down.
Yeah. Wim Hof is from the Netherlands, and he had studied Eastern mysticisms and Hindi, a lot of the different yoga techniques. And he had searched a lot of different things, a lot of different forms. And he holds 26 world records. I know a couple of them have been broken by Stig, who's also from the Netherlands. And he's the guy who sat comfortably with the Guinness Book of World Records. Stig did, not Wim, but Stig sat on one breath for 22 minutes. And although that's impressive, so Wim Hof combines a breathing technique with an exercise, and instead of you talking about clouds and your feelings and floating away and doing this mystical Eastern Tibetan, kind of like Tibetan Tomo is the most similar, where you have the monks that sit in 20 below zero and they have a frozen blanket on their back and they heat themselves and they sit in a meditative state. They heat the blanket, they dry it from a frozen state. And Wim Hof has run he's run entire marathons at 20 below zero, barefoot and in shorts. He's climbed Mount Everest just in shorts. And the issue is, well, he can control his temperature. That's neat. But it's not just that. It's his inflammatory response. And he's been going around the world and sharing this. And there are these systems, and this is a perfect example. Now, this is Wim, and I'm paraphrasing. I'm not speaking for him, but I am paraphrasing. And he would say, he's standing there in front of us. And I had done some basic research. I had a friend who introduced me, but here I am at this conference. I did not know his background. And he said, there are these monks sitting in temples for 3,000 years. He goes, you want a effing prayer? I'll give you one. He slaps his hands together, rattles something off in Hindu, and says, his quote, and he doesn't acronym it, but he says, effing demystify. He goes, stop mystifying. You can do this. Your kids can do this. We can all do this. We forgot that we can do this. We can all do this. And he was injected with a dead form specifically of E. coli, and he was able to show through blood work in a hospital university setting, there are many documentaries on this, that he controlled his inflammatory response, which is medically impossible. And what drug company wants you to control your inflammatory response? And I do talk about this in the book. I do talk about Wim and Stieg and Anthony Holland and the Tree Whisperer, the Secret Life of Trees. But about Wim, he then repeated that same study with 14 other researchers. And this was a few years ago, where they all were injected with this dead strain of this bacteria should have made them violently ill or sick. And they all meditated through in 3 hours. He took a man up Mount Kilimanjaro with no climatization. They took blood samples and they climatized on the climb. He did the same thing in heat. He controlled his temperature in heat. And it's not just temperature, cold and hot. Wim Hof consciously controlling his immune system, his inflammatory response, and then sharing it with others is the exact opposite of secret monks that live in secret temples, that have secret systems, that have been banging on the blinky board and not sharing or keeping their systems that aren't actually connecting us back together. But people like Stieg Severinsen and Wim Hof are sharing a breathing technique that you don't sit down and I will tell you right now, from practicing for almost 2 years, you do not think about clouds. If you use the breathing technique that Wim Hof teaches, you will sense things in your entire body immediately in ways that will be unique or similar to just about everyone who does it. And it is incredible. This is not a mental exercise. This isn't where you're going to have peaceful thoughts. Yes, you will become, there's a lot of medical benefits that have been shown. There's been a lot of research now on Wim. He's been studied here at the University of Minnesota, hypothermia department. He's been studied all over the world. There's a lot of different layers, not just about what he can generate in heat, but the autonomic response. And it has many benefits physiologically to your mental state. But what I'm telling you is, this practice is not some mystification that hasn't done anything or changed in 2,000 or 3,000 years from secret monks that live in secret temples. This is something that Wim Hof does. He broke all these records, and many times it's in front of hundreds or thousands of people. And he's done it while he's talking to people. And this is not just a mindfulness to feel happy so you don't road rage in traffic. This is a connect you to the earth, a surreal, I've seen geometric shapes. I've experienced, again, there is an amazing, in my experience, there's been an amazing sense of control of like electro, it's difficult to describe the sensations, but you have this level of awareness and consciousness of every layer of your being, and not in some mystical woo-woo way. I mean, like, you feel it. This is grounding, and you can feel it. And I've reached a point where through the breathing exercise, I cannot breathe for 5 minutes. And the not breathing part isn't what's important. What's important is, how much am I oxygenating my cells while I'm doing this process? And Wim is, to bring it full circle, Wim Hof is a perfect example of a real life superhuman that has gone on to teach and explain that we need to demystify and share this, that we are asleep, that we are that all of us have these what currently are called superhuman abilities, but they're not. They're just things we've forgotten we can do.
Right. I totally agree with that, man. Look, because how does a super synchronicity work? Where you can't prove synchronicity in your life, and yet it happens over and over and over and over again. You can't prove things that you're manifesting or your thoughts when I swear, I don't know how many times in my life, especially when I'm like in the zone, that I will be humming a song in my head and walk into a room, not hearing the radio, and that song is on playing or something.
That's wild, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy. So we're tapping into all this stuff, and we're calling it magic. But yet magicians use what? They trace geometrical shapes. They use sounds, colors, sense, and vibration and emotion. That's why, I really am into this idea that we are these types of antennas that we haven't learned to either project with or sync up with certain energies. Like when you were talking about yoga earlier. Well, people like Aleister Crowley and others just kind of surpassed the basics and went to like the raw stuff where you can just hold your body in certain shapes and all of a sudden you're tapped into a frequency. That's what it is. Like it's like, well, on my chakras, I can feel this or that. Well, you're tapped into a frequency, and then you hold your body in another shape, and that's because there's this I guess the relevancy of the earth and what's going on and everything compared to you. That's the whole idea of it, and it's opening up these what you're talking about, like the helix or the quadra helixes and stuff inside you, and they call it Kundalini, and they call it this and that, but we don't really know what it is yet. I don't think.
No, I mean, Johnny Chang, to go east, in this conversation, the reality is that, there was a bunch of documentaries about Johnny Chang, and they're looking at Qigong, and they're looking at directing electrical impulses and energies through the human body. And how can you have a guy that looks like he's actually activating, that he's actually, it appears that he's shocking people and he's actually curing them from diseases. And then it's like, well, that was amazing. In the 90s, people went, oh, that's cool. And it's like, okay, but hold on here, because we're in the East and we're not in the West. And I mean, there's been some crazy things being figured out recently, like water can burn, literally burn. It can create a bridge. That's something that we learned actually over 100 years ago. And you have a lot of properties, like Dr. Emoto Masuru. A lot of people have talked about Johann Gronder as far as water consciousness and research. And we're understanding a little more about organisms like funguses and bacteria, and also how the plants and trees are actually connected and talk and sound. And but we tend to separate the East and the West. And the East and the West tends to be like, okay, well, there was some things that happened in the East, but really everything relevant happened in the Fertile Crescent, and that's the end of the day. And that
can't be true.
That's not interesting. Right. And especially if we're as old, that means that we have a segment, you have this Qigong master, Johnny Chang, who's starting paper on fire. And, when they're doing this, the documentary, I think it was called Ring of Fire. I wrote about it. And then the documentary came out in 1988, and he's doing what he's calling bioenergy. And Johnny Chang is showing that he is like, people are getting zapped right on camera. They're like, ow, that hurts. He's literally directing current. And again, this is the part where we bang on the keyboard again. He's doing a practice that is a few thousand years old.
They made him get completely naked, by the way, to make sure he didn't have any like devices on him and stuff too. Almost completely naked.
Yeah. Well, they really, I think they did a really good documentary about him. And what's interesting though, is I went a little deeper on it, and this is going to sound, the truth is stranger than
fiction.
This is, I know, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but it's basically, they were able to take a look at it. There was papers that they looked into that basically this is possibly cold nuclear fusion between forces driving, the sodium potassium transfer in the cell is in a constant state of cold nuclear fusion. So this is a serious scientific researchers and papers that are basically saying that, and this is in the Journal of Cellular Physiology, the effects of biophasic and monophasic electrical stimulation on mitochondrial dynamics. I mean, so that's a lot of blah, 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 which is really serious. But
which means we have like a massive potential to like energize universes inside of a human body almost compared to what's going on.
Well, that and direct energy at the most, like, so when you snap a finger and you think Merlin the magician, the reality is you just know how to sing a song and mix these three atoms together because you want a flower, or you want to cure something, or you want to send a message. Or the reality is that if you have the ability to control the nuclear cold fusion of the mitochondrial cellular structure, well, we could geek out about that for a few hours, but the truth is that there's papers showing that this is possible. And here's the thing, this is another indicator. Scientists to this day do not understand. We don't understand the intricacies ultimately of the human body. I have a friend who's had a son that went through a traumatic brain injury and had the opportunity to fortunately work with some of the best neurosurgeons in the world, and they'll hold up their pinky and they said to her, we know this much about the human brain. And this is the one of the best neurosurgeons in the world, and it's the pinky. They're pointing to their pinky. And so when you start talking nuclear cold fusion and conscious control of your immune system, and there are scientific papers and literally human beings you can watch on YouTube. Wim Hof is an easy one to look up. There's lots of documentaries about him. It's super inspiring. You can learn how to do it in 15 minutes, and you will never do a normal meditation again. Once you learn how to do Wim Hof, in 15 minutes, you'll experience more, I'm pretty certain, than anything you've ever done when it comes to meditate. It's incredible because it's one thing to do the breathing, but it's another thing to do unfortunately, it involves being cold. You have to take ice cold showers.
Well, I'm down to try it, man. Like, I'm down to try it for sure. We got to take our last break here. Look, you guys, if you want to call in, you can. Now's the time. If you want to ask any questions to our guests, 1-800-588-0335. We'll be right back. More Lighting the Void coming up. Stay with it. Yeah, I don't know about the cold shower thing, man. I could try.
In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from GetTheTea.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, you know I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of G.I. Joy at GetTheTea.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's GetTheTea.com.
Hi, this is Aaron Hunter, host of Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast where we tell real paranormal experiences of people from around the world. And we also conduct interviews with authors, investigators, psychics, and mediums. Real people, real stories, real fear. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Fringe FM. See you then.
My name is Jake. I'm from Billings, Montana, and I am a void walker.
Hey, Joe Root. Thanks for lighting the void. This is Janine in the bluegrass of Kentucky, and I am a void walker.
What's up, guys? This is Damien from San Marcos, Texas, and I'm a void walker. I listen to the show to keep myself aligned with the world.
Hi, this is Laura, aka Laura Lavender. I'm from Las Vegas, and I listen to Lighting the Void because it helps me understand some of the strangest experiences I've had. So thanks for all that you do and for always being there for us, Joe.
Ever seen an extraterrestrial? It can be hard to believe they exist unless you've seen one for yourself. What if I told you I've seen them my whole life, but have never had a witness who shared the encounter with me? Now, what if I told you I saw 4 of them, 2 with blue skin, and there are over 20 witnesses to this CE5 event? My new book, The Blue Beings, Visitation at the UFO Conference, documents actual accounts from real witnesses, many of which have gone on record to attest to this otherworldly reality. Be a part of the quantum paradigm shift that is taking place right now. Go to johnpolkmedia.com to get your copy of The Blue Beings, Visitation at the UFO Conference, on sale right now at johnpolkmedia.com. That's JOHNPOLK media.com.
Folks, this is very important information. What's to be said about CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. Our CBD is made from hemp and has 0.003 THC, which means this wonderful product won't get you high, no matter what amount you take. What does CBD do for the body? My hands are tied, but you can Google CBD benefits and be astounded. When you're finished reading, you'll want to log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. and purchase. Life is good when you feel good. People are tired of pain. People are asking for non-GMO organic products to help them with you fill in the blank. Legal in 49 states, and again, our CBD is made from hemp. Ancient Life Oil is about helping people one by one by one. If you wonder how good the product is, the CEO takes it every day without miss. AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Have a great day.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. I just went and took a cold shower. No, I'm just playing. Our guest tonight... that's the only thing that scared me before the break when you're talking. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm totally down to do this. Let's go do this. And then you're like, yeah, but you got to get in some cold water. And I'm thinking, Jarrod Murphy, our guest tonight's with us. I don't want to have to drink or get in cold water. I don't want to do that at all. Just being honest with you. But if it's going to connect me to society, then it's totally worth it.
No, just start with the breathing technique and then do the cold. But there's a whole system to work your way into it. 30 seconds, a minute, then 5, then 10. Before you know it, you'll be calling me from a mountain spring.
Oh, yeah.
Dipped in.
Yeah, we got
30
those
degrees.
Here. We got those here for sure. Oh, shoot. Something just fell. All right. Anyway, so I'm just destroying the studio here, by the way, because I'm excited about this. So let's kind of get into the end game of this. Is this really all about changing our archaeology on the earth so that we can change the frequencies of what's going on? Because that to me is huge. To me, that's a big thing that we should be talking about.
Yes, I think that's exactly. We need to change. I think we need to change archaeology from a search and recovery to a search and rescue. It has to be about the rescue of our current humanity, and because there's so much technology laying in the ground and we could digress about how many modern militaries or governments or gray state already understand or know this, or institutions, possibly very old religious institutions, may have some of these technologies or are aware that this is not the highest level of where we've been at. That may have been true in the past, but the truth is now that there's enough people waking up that being able to go into Guatemala and or using these seismic metamaterials and looking at this engineered soil and seeing that how we use soil and trees and plants not only could help us with planning whole urban developments against earthquakes, but it could complement and help Anthony Holland's type of work where we're killing viruses. Can you imagine if just you had a 7G tower and its only job was, I'm not feeling well, and if you walk by it, you don't have cancer anymore?
Yeah. We need to get to that point.
But that, right, and that technology and the way everything was interconnected, we need to put down these urges to either hurt each other. We are one race. We are one human race. We are so far away from the Middle Ages, yet people are doing and mystifying. It's disgusting. It's so upsetting what's happened recently, but also in reference to race, but also in reference to our religions, our separations based.
Yeah.
Our systems we're not, if there is a lot of different layers to archaeology. And one of the most obvious is that our history is so complex and so underappreciated that it doesn't show on one level that we are all connected, but we're not seeing it. And at the same time, these technologies could be helping us in present day, and that search and recovery then needs to happen. And when you send out an archaeologist and they don't find something, and I think this is super important, archaeologists need to be paid not to find things. They need to not be chained to academic hubris, and they need to not be chained to, well, if I don't find something, if it doesn't fall into the current paradigm and this is the current accepted theory, which is it's terrible that we've really had modern, in quotes, archaeology for just really the last couple hundred years. And there's established theories that have become doctrine. Theories are meant to be built on it, and ultimately they'll be broken. My book, like John Anthony West or Schock or Eric von Daniken, all these great people who have done this early research, and Brian Forrest's continued work, and Michael Tellinger, they're all people doing, everyone has seen elements of a past, and we're all simultaneously, I think, optimistically converging on an awareness, like you said, defrost, that this past is our present and it's our future, and it has the ability to save us on many different levels, and that's exciting, I think.
Yeah, and all we really got to do, I think a lot of times, is there's so many influences out there. There's so many, I don't know, but back in the 80s, what influenced us? Like music, TV maybe, magazines and toys, right? But now we've got just so much just crap coming at us from and I'm just, crap's just a word, but everything is coming at us.
Yeah.
Data at our fingertips. Like we have to make the time to go inside ourselves again. Like what the Zen masters were trying to do was like try to find this experience where time is eternal, where you can just ring a bell and stay in that frequency forever. Because that's where you start remembering all this stuff.
Yeah, as you wake and move throughout your day, even in my design build efforts, they became shaped around, as you move into a home, whether the home is a $200,000 home or $1 million home, it has the same formaldehyde and the same bad chemical off-gassing, products that don't entrain your brain. The lighting, it's not designed around that meditation that life actually is, to be able to wake up and move through a hallway and do your stretches and do your hand balancing, and to be able to move. And what do you smell? Do you need an aloe vera plant, or do you need the essential oil? When you see the lighting, and do you need to hear a real frequency? Does it need to be in the form of water dripping or flowing? Does it need to be in the sound of a bell? Does it need to be a sound of music? And is it digital or is it real analog sound? And how you sleep and breathe and move from the moment you wake up and through the day and through your sleep cycle, how are you living that connection? And it starts with, I don't think we build the way that the ancients built. There's not enough structures left to say it. We'd probably have to save it for another time, but I think absolutely that meditation and your very training, not just your mind, but your body together, requires a different space than a dining room, living room, and kitchen and 3 bedrooms.
Man, that is very well said. There is also something to be said about meditation in a dark room. Like I've read tons of studies on this and practice it myself. And, usually people they want to light a bunch of candles and get all burn incense, which is fine. But for some reason, this whole thing, we've talked about this on the show quite a bit, but this whole thing about being able to go inside yourself, I don't care if it's if you're practicing lucid dreaming or sleep states or hypnagogic stuff or hypnosis, but I think when we go inside ourselves, we start waking things up. So if you've ever drawn, we have a channel in the Fringe FM chat called Sacred Geometry, right? If you ever focus your energy on drawing a sacred geometrical shape, all kinds of stuff starts waking up to you. Not just the shape, but it's crazy what starts awakening inside you. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. I'm sure you kind of do because you talk about archaeology.
Oh, well, the Wim Hof, like I said, when you reach when you practice it for a while, in my case, a few weeks in, I got to the point where, unfortunately, I'm going to say the ice cold water, but you continue the breathing technique while you're in the ice cold water. And I do it in the dark, and I do it with my eyes closed.
Wow.
And
maximum effort. There you go.
And I manifested without trying. I had no expectation, but I'm doing the breathing technique. And like I said, you're very connected and present to not only physically where you're at, but every sense, you can feel everything in your body. And I saw bright 3-dimensional black background, but with bright, fiery, orange-red geometric shapes. And they were very consistent in size, and there was thousands, and they were dimensional, and it was a state I could stay in. And the sensations between what I felt I was controlling in my body, the sensation, again, you're not cold. So that's what's interesting, is that you're in the water, but you're not cold anymore. You generate your own. In fact, Wim Hof's book is called Inner Fire, but it's cliche, but it's what you create. You create an inner fire. But the ice cold water with the meditation, I ended up in this state where I'm totally in the dark, and these geometric patterns are all around me. And I'm like, what is this? Because at first I wanted to discount. I wasn't in this meditative state. I wasn't doubting that I was in the state. So it wasn't like I was going, okay, well, I think it's because I'm about to black out, or that there's these static patterns or something. No, these were geometric patterns, and they were clear as day. I could draw them out for you, and it stayed with me while I continued the meditative breathing and the cold water. It all comes together, completely connecting me. And it was, for me, it was that's my experience with that kind of work. But you're having experiences that people are having to do with psychedelic states, lucid dreaming, out of the body states, hypnagogia stuff. You're totally conscious. You're totally aware. Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing.
And that's something. Yeah. Well, I think it's important that people hear that they can do this Because I think it's a lot like maybe if you and I said, hey, let's go to the gym and lift 1,000 pounds. And you might say, well, I'm not quite there yet. And I'm like, well, I'm not quite there yet. So let's use steroids. And the problem, so the problem with my personal opinion, it's not that I think that people can't explore their mind and body. Everyone has to be a self-experimenter. Everyone has to figure out what's right for them. But I think that when you jumpstart, sometimes you wreck some internal systems. And I know I've studied, I have not done it, but I've studied Sylvia Ivanova, the New Earth lady, and I've studied Graham Hancock's extensive ayahuasca trips. And the reality is I know that based on these other explorers that they say that once you go down that road, you can't access it without assistance. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know that if you haven't fully explored all the abilities that, we're in safe mode. So if you explore an ability that Wim or Stieg, and Stieg Severinson's thing is breathology, but again, same studies, same amazing principles, but to go down these roads, I think it's a worthwhile endeavor to not just jump to the 1,000-pound lift and to do the journey of you grounding your mind and body where it's at and developing from there, because I actually don't think it's hard. It's hard, but it's not hard the way people think it's going to be hard. They don't need to jump right to the drug-assisted, eggplant of the octopus state. Maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, this stuff we talk about all the time. They developed these initiatic systems for a reason. And we've been looking, a lot of times we've been looking for these shortcuts, right? And people end up getting there are things that get messed up, but then there's these old initiatic systems like, no, like understand the polar energies first, then to start understanding the elements, then these higher energies, and then frequencies, and then you kind of build this slowly thing up, like Pythagoras' mystery school. Like you had to wait for years and understand certain things about instruments and things before he even let you in the door. Right? I'm not saying that's right, true, or whatever, but we tend to think that because a race was, 2,000, 20,000 years old or something or whatever, that their technology is obsolete compared to ours. When a lot of times it could be totally backwards. Like they understand things that we call spiritual now, and it was just technology for them.
Well, the Babylonian Plimpton tablet, it's in the first chapters of my book. This is a tablet that describes spherical geometry and right triangles, and it's done in a format of basically a teaching aid from Sumeria. This is trigonometry. It was supposed to be Pythagorean. Well, it ain't. It's
right.
I like to, it's throw out big words like ain't. It's
it ain't.
It's it ain't. It's the Babylonian Plimpton tablet, and it literally describes trigonometry. And there's another one in the same. The technology of this table being, again, it's the Pythagorean triples, but here it is. It's only a couple thousand years before him. And again, if it's a tablet, it predates the Greeks by 1,000 years for this tablet. And it's, you're already seeing the trigonometry that it has a huge advantage over our version of trigonometry. And I talk about it because, again, it's an echo, of a technology that's much, much older. There's, we're talking 3,700 years old and 1,000 years before Pythagoras. And there's another tablet. It has the same thing, and where it's has no interesting name. It's YBC 7289. It's another cuneiform tablet, and it has a 60 as its base with basically it just describes much more accurately using spherical geometry, which would be very useful if you were a frequency and a wave-based society. Mm-hmm. You would want this kind of science, but we're talking again 1,000 to 2,000 years before Pythagoras. And we're talking just 2 tablets. And there are millions of cuneiform tablets that have not been translated. And we also know that Sumer is not the center of the universe. We already know that Göbekli Tepe in Turkey is older by thousands of years. So we already know that the story of humanity as we know it is officially broken with the acknowledgement by mainstream. It's not because of them, but mainstream science has had to acknowledge that Göbekli Tepe is pushing back thousands of years past when we were supposed to be, meandering, because they're going to ignore a whole city off of the coast of Cuba. They haven't been real up to sexy dates on this whole soil thing. And they're not looking at the complexities of all the geopolymers, like the Cadiz Spanish, the wall I mentioned at the beginning. It's basically like Teflon, and there's no barnacles on it. It's thousands of years old, and we don't know how to make it. And there's just so many things that add up to where we are now having this concept that we know we're spiritual. We know we're connected. See, that's the key thing. I think we know that we are loving, we're connective, but we keep trying to reconnect, and we keep getting pieces of it. And to your point, or to your question and point about how important, it's so important for us to get back to our past so that we can actually truly connect with each other and no longer be lonely as a people.
Right.
Not lonely as a couple, but as a people, that we can really, that as we walk down the street, we're really not strangers. We would not hurt each other anymore. This sounds super la-la, but it's not.
But if we were, I totally agree with you. Like if we were totally connected and understood this and felt it, we wouldn't do these things to each other, period. It's 100% true. And like I know we really got to wrap this up quick. So tonight we're talking about like your book, It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us, Discovering Our Lost History. Jarrod, where can people find you on the web?
Yeah, so the book's at Amazon, and I'm still working on the audiobook. There will be an audiobook, but I am also at Not Aliens on YouTube. I don't have a ton of videos out yet, but I do have some, and a couple of my time in South Africa, I was doing some exploratory research in January, so I have a couple of videos out, but I'm working on a more extensive video, and again, that's on my YouTube channel at Not Aliens. And you can get a hold of me there. And then from all the, from hopefully this great night, I'll be on your podcast list, and
absolutely,
you'll have to just find the book on Amazon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. And we'll have to do this again. We'll have to have, I'm sure we could have many discussions about many things. So it was really cool having you on the show for the first time.
I appreciate you having me on so much. And thank you to your listeners too for tuning in for this. I really appreciate it.
And you guys, all the archives are caught up, so this one will come out quick too. All the links and the show notes will be there. Everything is going to be there. Thank you to my patrons. Thank you to the producer, especially Pacho. Thank you guys at the Fringe FM chat and the Fringe FM team. Please support the station, support the show. Up next is Ryan Gable, The Secret Teachings. We'll be back tomorrow night, same time, same channel, right here on the Fringe FM live. You never know where the discussion's going to go. You're on Lighting the Void. You guys have a good night.